He never imagined that by getting close to someone so different from everything he knew, he would be confronted with something so disturbing, his own way of seeing the world. Not that he was a rigid person. In fact, he was someone with a certain degree of flexibility in his opinions, a mindset that easily opened up to the new, the modern, the things that challenged old paradigms. But what he felt in front of her was something that made him question even the foundations of his own identity. It was love, without a doubt. Something he felt in the details, in the little exchanges of glances, in the shy smiles, in the conversation that seemed never-ending. He found himself immersed in her, in what she represented to him, a strong, independent, modern woman, living in a world that challenged his own conceptions of life, love, and relationships. But at the same time, what he felt for her was also fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of her freedom, her autonomy, the way she didn't seem to need him, and even more the fact that he didn't know if he would be able to handle that. He grew up with traditional values, carrying the weight of family, harmonious living, and marriage as the foundation of everything. He saw himself as someone who, at his core, always believed that love required commitments, sacrifices, and above all, the assurance that both were willing to move in the same direction. Her world seemed to follow a different logic, one that, in his view, could be complicated, even threatening to the harmony he had always valued. Her independence made him uncomfortable. It was clear to him that she didn't need anyone. Not in the sense of lacking affection or love, but because she had her own life, a journey that he felt he couldn't fully comprehend. The way she managed her career, her relationships, and her own choices seemed to challenge everything he believed was necessary for a true partnership. He knew his roots were firmly planted in a reality where women weren't just life partners, but also figures who took care of the home, seeing themselves in the role of support and harmony. And she, with the strength of her presence and her autonomy, put everything he believed to the test. With each encounter, he found himself more attracted to her, but also more anxious. How could he maintain a connection with a woman who seemed to be complete on her own? He didn't know what it took to be compatible with her. And perhaps this doubt consumed him more than the desire to be by her side, the doubt that grew within him. He thought a lot about what he truly wanted. The physical attraction was there, but she wasn't just a seductive presence. She was a challenging one. He didn't know if he wanted to be the man who helped her achieve even greater success, or if he wanted to be someone who took care of her, her safe harbor. Perhaps this doubt was the greatest obstacle between them. It wasn't that he didn't want to support her. He did, and he genuinely felt a strong desire to be by her side, to be the person she could trust. But the idea of a relationship where he wasn't the center, where she had control over her own life, deeply frightened him. The fear of losing his own identity within a relationship where she was the dominant figure made him withdraw. He felt that his ideas of romance, love, and partnership were being constantly challenged and questioned. Not that he believed love was merely a power exchange, but he had always imagined that for a relationship to work, a balance was necessary, and perhaps that meant having a bit more of his presence, a more defined, more involved role. However, when faced with her autonomy and the life she built on her own, he felt he was losing that balance, that perhaps his presence was unnecessary. The pain of uncertainty. The moment he felt most lost was when she looked at him in an almost unsettling way, as if she knew exactly what he was thinking. She knew he admired her, felt increasingly drawn to her strong personality and her outlook on life, but she also knew he had a problem with her freedom. However, her gaze did not convey judgment. It was simply a look, something like a silent response to the questions he still didn't allow himself to voice. The issue wasn't his lack of feelings. He loved the way she was, how she stood out in such a challenging world. The issue lay in his own insecurity. He didn't know how to be necessary to someone so strong and independent. He wasn't sure if he could be part of something that he saw more as her personal mission than a joint endeavor. Every time he distanced himself a bit, he felt guilty, as if he were denying something real. But every time he got closer, he felt a fear that eventually she would continue her journey without him, that he would just be a fleeting phase. What he couldn't understand was that the reason he had this fear was precisely what he wanted to avoid the most, the feeling that he wouldn't be able to give that woman the space she needed. The fear of losing himself in someone so immense, so self-sufficient, made him question whether he could truly be necessary for her. He silently wondered, can I be myself while also being the person she needs? This doubt stretched further and further, like a fragile thread about to snap. He felt as though he was living a silent dilemma, one that challenged him with every step. The logic that guided his life, so well defined by tradition, the security of certainties and the idea of love as mutual surrender, seemed to be constantly deconstructed when he was near her. Every word, every action of hers seemed to provoke what he believed to be the right path to love and relationships. She was living proof that love didn't have to be a construction in which he necessarily was the central pillar. She was self-sufficient, she completed herself, and he wondered, where do I fit into all of this? In moments when he felt lost, he tried to hold on to his own values. He thought about marriage, about the roles of a man and a woman within a partnership, and the belief that both should share responsibilities, but above all, share the weight of life. For him, this always meant an exchange of care. He needed to feel that he had something concrete to offer, but she seemed to live without that need. She didn't need his protection. She didn't need his constant support. What he couldn't understand was that she wasn't asking for this, neither explicitly nor implicitly. She wanted something more, something he didn't yet know how to provide. With every conversation, with every meeting, he noticed that she spoke of her dreams and ambitions as if there were no room for anyone else there, as if the only available space was her own. When he asked about her, about what motivated her, the answer always came back with the same strength. I do it for myself because I need to. I don't depend on anyone. At first, this attracted him. He admired her determination, her autonomy. He found it fascinating how she wouldn't let herself be defined by others, how she didn't bind herself to expectations. But now it bothered him. Fear began to creep in. What if she never needs me? What if I'm just a temporary distraction in her life? This fear, which was already turning into unease, took shape every day, like a shadow projected over his vision of the future. He wanted to believe that she needed him in some way, that there was a place for him in her life. But what he felt wasn't exactly the sensation of being indispensable. He wasn't sure if he was falling for her, or for the idea that he could in some way be the man who would break through her independence, who would make her want to give up a bit of her autonomy for the sake of a relationship. But the doubt remained. Was this really what she wanted? Or was he just trying to fit his own desire into a mold that made no sense to her? The meeting of two realities. That day they met at a cafe in the city center. She arrived on time with that serene smile on her face, always so full of life, so complete in herself. He was nervous, trying to stay calm, but there was something in his gaze that didn't go unnoticed. She picked up on it right away. Her perception was sharp, as if she knew what was going on inside him even without him saying a word. "You seem different today," she commented softly after sitting down at the table. "Are you worried about something?" He hesitated. She knew him well enough to sense that something was off, but he didn't know how to begin. How could he explain the whirlwind of feelings that consumed him without coming across as weak or insecure? How could he talk about his internal struggle without seeming like he was questioning their relationship? "I have been thinking a lot about us," he started, his voice steady but with a slight tremor. "I've been questioning what it really takes for a relationship to work. And honestly, I don't know if what I can offer is enough for you." She watched him for a moment, her eyes shining with something hard to read, but clearly a mix of curiosity and concern. "I don't need anything, if that's what you're thinking," she said, almost as if she could read his thoughts. "I'm self-sufficient, I'm successful, and I know what I want. But that doesn't mean I don't want to share my life with someone. I just don't need someone to complete me, because I'm already whole. That doesn't make me hard to love." Those words hit him hard. She was standing there, saying exactly what he feared. She didn't need him, or at least not in the way he imagined he would be needed. And somehow he felt that deep down. This scared him even more. How could he be part of something where he wasn't the pillar, where he wasn't the foundation? She continued, as if she were saying the exact words he needed to hear, but still didn't know how to accept. "I believe in love, in companionship, but that doesn't mean I have to give up who I am. I want someone who understands this, who realizes that to truly love you don't have to lose your essence. On the contrary, it's important to respect and celebrate that." He fell silent, processing her words. She wasn't asking for anything but respect for her freedom. And maybe that was what he most needed to understand. Perhaps he had confused her freedom with loneliness. Perhaps he was afraid that her independence was a barrier, when in reality she just wanted someone willing to walk beside her, without trying to change her, without trying to limit her autonomy. He looked into her eyes, searching for something more, but what he saw was simply the truth. And for the first time, he wondered if he could set aside his insecurities, if he could accept this love without trying to mold it to his way. The challenge of understanding. What he understood now was that his fear was not of love, but of how he would need to adapt to a new reality. What he needed, more than anything else, was to allow himself to understand that true love is not based on control, but on mutual trust. He needed to learn to trust her, and above all, to trust himself to live in a relationship where he would not only be a reflection of what she wanted, but also someone capable of walking alongside her, respecting his own independence. Deep down, he knew he was facing a great challenge, but perhaps this was the only way to understand once and for all that love and freedom are not enemies, but companions. The real challenge was discovering how to be needed without suffocating, how to be a partner without losing himself. He just didn't know if he would be able to achieve that, but looking at her, maybe it was time to try. The silence between them grew heavy, but not in an uncomfortable way. It was a silence of reflection, a space where both were trying to digest the words exchanged. He looked at her, seeing a woman so complete, so full of herself, and felt a strange sense of inadequacy. Not because she rejected him, but because he was being challenged to become someone different. He already knew she didn't need him to complete her, but perhaps over time, he could learn how to be a part of her life without trying to be the force that sustained her. What he feared, after all, was not her independence, but the fear of being left behind, of not being essential. He had grown up with the idea that love meant a complete intertwining of lives, where there was no room for autonomy. And now, in front of her, he realized that his perspective was limited. Love could be free, but at the same time, immense. He just needed to understand how it would be possible to coexist in that space. She, with the calmness that always accompanied her, seemed to have already resolved this equation within herself. She knew who she was and what she wanted. And what she wanted was not a partner who would try to diminish her freedom, but someone who would respect her independence and choose to stand by her side anyway. It wasn't a difficult request to understand, but for him, it seemed to present an even greater challenge, understanding how he could be part of that kind of love. For the first time, he felt a little lighter. Her words were starting to make sense. Perhaps, instead of trying to be the person who completed her, he should focus on being someone who would accompany her. Love, he thought, wasn't about being the anchor for the other person, but rather about being the wind that, instead of suffocating, pushed her toward her own dreams. He felt the weight of an understanding that made him question everything he had always believed about relationships. She smiled softly, as if she knew what was going on in his mind. "I don't need you to change me. I just need you to accept me as I am. That's all." He felt the warmth of those words, something comforting yet so challenging at the same time. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but something inside him said that perhaps it was worth trying to understand what love meant without the constraints of the expectations he had grown up believing. Is it possible to love without losing freedom? Leave your comment and share your thoughts on the true meaning of love.